Okay, this is probably like, if you have to just learn one.
This is 98% of what I do.
Yeah, both of us really. I mean, I fuck around with deep half, like on top of deep half more than Rory does. But yeah, we'll try to gangbang this one out here. So you should kind of show the initial.
Okay, so this is where Robin talked about at the beginning of this module that we're intercepting. We understand that deep half is going to be the option here. It's really easy to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And my main goal is to stop Rob from getting right underneath my hips. There's a lot we can do, and we'll talk about it. But if I can keep Rob in front of me rather than completely underneath me, oh my God, so much easier to deal with. So as Rob starts to pull himself underneath, I'm killing that space by dropping to my far hip and bringing my knee tight to his hip. So from here, he is looking to access this big space, this big doorway. If he can come underneath here and fill that space, he's pretty happy. So from here, before he's underneath me, I'm dropping to my left hip. My foot is back, live toe as best I can, because I do want a little bit of base in case he tries to drive into me. And my knee is here checking his hip. Now, even just from here, Rob's ability to try and pull himself into that space underneath me is going to be quite difficult, and this starts to set me up very easy to have great access to his head. Because what this also does is it takes me from my hips being up at his shoulders like this, where you can see his head is quite flush to my hip, to taking my hip down to his hip. And now his head becomes even more accessible with this crossface. And then as I've crossfaced, I'm now able to start working. Because he couldn't get underneath me, his ability to hide this arm, which if you've gone through the module on how to control deep half, which is, I would recommend that when we look at trying to break it down so that you're able to reverse engineer this. If he can't get this arm underneath me, it becomes much more accessible for me to start looking at crossface. And now from here, depending on what I'm wanting from here, I can either look to recede in range, but if we get a really good crossface and underhook, I would recommend turning this into like your pressure passing and starting to work on your pummeling.
Yeah. So obviously, if you've watched the deep half module, there are ways of dealing with this, but man, it's a crap ton of work. So if I get your head towards the camera, this whole thing where we've dropped as he's trying to reach underneath me. As far as securing the underhook, the thing about this, like even if Rory's, let's say he got his hand up here and he's trying to keep this, it's so difficult to keep me from pummeling.
It's a useless underhook.
Yeah, exactly. So like, don't worry too much about them having, like, if he starts with a pretty good underhook here and he's got my knee really like under his control, then it's too late, right? Like he's done a good deep half entry, I can't do this. But if it's anything other than that, let's just rotate around here, where he slipped this out of the way, that sort of thing. We're intercepting him with the crossface first. We don't give a shit about the underhook. Our knee is tight to the hip, in base and all that. I will eventually slide this underhook in, and if I have a hard time getting the underhook going with my hand, I'll just use my elbow and separate his biceps from his body, and then get the underhook at that point. So just do not rush. Emphasize the crossface first. Once we get the underhook here, the type of passing that you can do, like Rory said, you can go pressure, you can go knee cut, you can go back take. We'll do a video on each one of those just so this video doesn't end up being 12 minutes long. But the essence of the movement is strong crossface here. We may even walk to this side a little bit to enable the underhook battle to be easier, right? Because again, the nature of the crossface and the fact that I've got his hip boxed in means that he can't really move me around very much.
And my arm is kind of stuck underneath at first because I was looking to try and pull and have this control in the hip. Once Rob dropped his hip, my arm is still in here, but it's not doing anything to actually move his hip. And so it's not going to be uncommon once he starts to cross face me that I have to start pulling this arm out
all the way out. Yeah.
And then at that point I have absolutely zero deep half.
Yeah, so that's what some of the back takes will be based on. Other ones will be based on some slightly different things.
And I recommend playing with that even like from that fuck your jiu-jitsu approach of turning your hip and cutting, but not doing the crossface and not doing an underhook. Just kind of sitting there and being comfortable where it's like, hey, I've lowered my center of gravity back. I've blocked off access in between my legs. What can he really do from here? They can't get underneath and they can't threaten back attacks. So now you've taken their already limited options and now you've cut that in half.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it became our most
Yeah, like we don't want to
When-
oversell this, but this shuts down deep half guard so damn
when my
much.
answer, instead of like looking at say like the traditional half guard killer or
Deep
deep
half
half
guard,
killer
yeah.
like Marcelo Garcia, where you're getting more
Which
on
we
top.
will show that,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're getting more on top, more athletic kind of stuff, just in the sense that we have to be more mobile. This, we literally just started doing because all we had to do is go. And
You just sit your lazy ass down
that could be the
fuck
solution.
up their deep half guard.